The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We will begin the webinar shortly. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Ardent's first ever virtual car buying workshop. I'm Ryan Keene, Vice President of Lending at Ardent. Tonight, you'll be viewing one of our most popular workshops hosted by two members of the Ardent team that have already provided hundreds of members with a stress-free car buying experience. They even helped me find my last car, and the process couldn't have been any easier. Just keep in mind that this is only our second virtual workshop, so I do ask for your patience as we smooth out the process. We also understand that everyone is dealing with a lot right now, and the team here at Ardent is committed to doing whatever we can to help. If you have any additional banking or borrowing needs, please don't hesitate to contact us. If you need to ask a question during the workshop, please click the Questions tab and type in your question. The photo to the left of the screen is an iPad, and the photo to the right is the screen of a desktop. We have Lisa from Ardent's marketing department on the line who will relay the questions to Steve and Pete during the seminar. There will be a question and answer session after the workshop. Steve Roberts is a Bucks County native who, prior to joining Ardent in 2016, spent 15 years as a car salesman and a sales manager at one of the largest dealerships in the country. From Matchbox Cars as a small boy to SCCA autocross racing, he always had a love for cars and for helping people. Therefore, it's no surprise that Steve is the car guy that he is today. The second member of our Auto Buying Concierge team is Pete Kurlick. Pete grew up spending many days at car shows and sitting in a mechanic shop watching classic muscle cars being built. As time went on, he found himself working as a service specialist to pay his way through college. His passion and involvement in the car industry continued as he eventually worked his way up to a sales manager at a large local dealership.
Good evening. How to drive away with your best car deal. My name is Steve Roberts, and Pete Kurlick is here with me as well. And to give you a little bit of history and background for us, we're both coming from a dealership, like Ryan mentioned, in the Langhorne area, and we've been doing this for quite a long time. It'll be a pleasure to help you through the process and give you some insight as to how to buy a car with less stress and a better deal. The agenda for today, we'll be covering the COVID-19 and how it's affecting the auto industry. We'll be talking about how to research to purchase a car with insight and knowledge of what you're looking at. Getting the best loan rate, of course. Acing your dealer interaction. Negotiating the best price. And getting the most for your trade.
Good evening, everyone. So obviously we wanted to discuss a little bit what the COVID-19 situation is doing to the automotive industry. And this will vary state to state, as that's how a lot of the different restrictions are being handled. We are speaking what we know about more so than anything. So we're speaking of how it is in Pennsylvania currently. It is slowing the purchase process. With that being said, it's less time at the auto dealerships, but it's more time communicating online via phone, email, and text messages. Now, it is more difficult to shop. If you know what you're looking for, it's actually an easier process a lot of times, but you cannot easily go out and test drive if you're not quite sure what you're looking for as of yet. Now, a positive note out of this is the prices are tending to be a little lower, especially in used cars. What's occurring is they are trying to liquidate their inventory to get the cash flow started again. And you're seeing the same thing by the manufacturers trying to entice people in with their incentives. A lot of that currently is lower rates along with payment deferral. Now, we do recommend looking at each situation individually, as they're not all built the same, but the manufacturers are trying to do the same thing with getting the industry going again.
How comfortable do you feel purchasing a vehicle? If you would please check off one of the categories and help us to understand where you're coming from. Okay. Comfortable and easy.
Pretty split.
Yeah, it's a three-way divide between comfortable, neutral, and uneasy, and that's not uncommon. Okay.
You can generally see it on someone's face when they walk onto the property.
Absolutely. When are you looking to purchase a vehicle? As soon as possible, within a couple weeks, sometime this year, or you're not looking to purchase a vehicle at this time? Give us some insight as to the urgency you may be having here. Okay. Well, this is a little bit different. A couple of people are looking as soon as possible, and then we have a few that are in a couple of weeks. Sometime this year is half of the people, and a few are not looking to purchase anytime soon. Okay, that's a big help. What type of vehicle are you looking to purchase? Here we're looking more for the general. Is it going to be something new, something used, something new that you lease, or again, you're not looking to purchase? Give us some insight today. Between new and used, it is a different approach. Okay, 59% are looking to get new, and 35% are used, and 6% are considering leasing. Awesome. Okay, thank you very much for that information. That helps a lot. So this comes down to our first slide here. And by the way, if you are on a iPhone, you have to swipe to the right so you'll be able to see the slides. I should have mentioned that earlier. I apologize. So here, what we want to know, and what you really need to get a hold of, is whether you're in great need of a new car, or if it's something you desire. Obviously, you're in a better position if it's something you desire because there's less pressure. If you are in desperate need, if your car is on the side of the road with the hood up and the smoke and steam coming from beneath, that's no reason to take shortcuts. It's still very important for you to take the time and do the research and find out what opportunities are out there that will fit your needs and your budget, saving you as much as possible.
You never want to say that to a car dealership, though, on the same hand. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, when we come into a dealership, we don't want to tell them that our car's out front broke down and we can't get anywhere without. That would make the salesperson smile from ear to ear, because desperation is something that he can prey on.
Leverage.
Extreme leverage. You're absolutely right, Pete.
So before we ever step onto a dealership property, we highly advise to get the research together. Now, when we say research, you want to start out with picking out your car. And the first thing we always tell people to do is determine what's a need, an actual need compared to a desire. And determining what's truly important and being flexible with everything else can really open up opportunities. If you walk into the situation saying it has to be blue, it has to have leather, and it has to have navigation, this, that, and the other, you're probably only going to find a handful of cars out there. And when you do that, you give them more leverage, and that's something we want to avoid. And you also take away the opportunity to save money. Along with budget, and a part a lot of people don't look at, what else goes into the auxiliary costs. Fueleconomy.gov is a big one. Along with that, insurance costs. And when we say check your insurance, please don't only speak to one entity. We do advise our members to use a broker so you can simply have multiple quotes done in one fell swoop. And you'd be amazed how much money you can save that way. I personally check my insurance annually. Now, not only should you be concerned about with what you want in your driveway, you should also be considering what's currently in your driveway. And a big way to do that is take a look at KBB and NADA. Okay, along with those two sources, We Buy Any Cars, another good one to get a value, along with, under normal circumstances, a CarMax. And no single resource is going to be 100% accurate. They all have some level of bias. And finally, especially if you're looking at a used, check the Carfax on it along with your own car. And there's a lot of information you can take back from it, along with state. You want to always look for a vehicle that moves state to state a lot. That can be a sign of what we call title washing. Along with that, inconsistent service records, salvage title, frame damage, major accidents, flood and fire, airbag deployment, and any form of mileage discrepancy, where it goes from, let's say, 30,000 miles up to 50, and then it comes back down.
Pete, one question I have for you.
Yes.
When you talked about needs and desires, are you referring more, when you're looking at certain options, you refer more to new or used when you talk about that?
Both. In both situations, as you could probably agree, more options tends to mean a little bit more cost. And the more specific you are with your options, that'll tend to narrow down what you can buy. Once you combine color with a long threshold of options, you could really narrow, let's say, 200 cars down to one. And that's not always necessarily a good thing. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I want everybody to get what they're looking for, but at the same time, we don't want to be boxed into a corner that you're referring to, and I do agree with that part. So it's really important to, in 2 years from now, be able to look out in that same driveway and see a car that you still appreciate.
You're not driving a car payment.
But at the same time, we don't need to limit ourselves either. The more open we are, the more flexible we are, the better pricing we can grab onto. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, getting the best loan rate. There's a lot. Pete spoke on this briefly earlier. There's a lot of ads that we're all seeing on TV right now with 0%. I can tell you right now that isn't always what it sounds to be, and this is where we have to really look deeply into the program that manufacturer is offering you. A lot of times, the 0% is based on you giving up a rebate. This is referring to new, by the way, folks. I'm sorry for those that are shopping used, but this part of it is about new. So if there's a large rebate in there, we have to be able to do the math and figure out if I take a loan from maybe Ardent at a very low interest rate and I take the rebate, will I save more money than if I take the 0% financing? So that's something that really you have to take in case-by-case basis and do the math. Because if you don't do the math, you could be making a poor decision. 0% sounds wonderful. It sounds like free money, but on the backside, it may not be. Okay, so we really want to take a close look at that. In order to help you calculate that and bring that all together is by going to our website and using our loan calculator. You go to ardentcu.org, and in there you go to resources where you'll find calculators. The drop down will come to calculators, and you go from there to the car loan calculator. And with that, you must factor in, of course, the cost of the car, the taxes for wherever you live, it's different from Philly to the suburbs, and it's different from state to state. So you have to use your sales tax, and then you have to figure in the tag fees. In the Philadelphia region, I use $550 for tag fees. That takes in everything from document fee to tag work to title work to registration, notary, and so forth and so on. So $550 for those state fees, 6% sales tax, 7% sales tax, 8% wherever you live, plus the cost of the car, and put that into the loan calculator. And from there, you'll find out what your monthly payment would be. Okay, and then from there, you can total that up and compare that the difference against the rebate. Okay.
And to your point, Steve, there's a lot in the fine print, lease deals, incentive deals, all of that nature of thing in the auto industry. So it is definitely something you've got to look at closely. So now on to acing your dealership interaction. And first and foremost, we know what kind of car we want now. We have to pick the dealer. Now, they are definitely not all the same. Any 5-minute research on the internet will tell you that, especially when you start bringing in the small lots, the Steve's Corner lot, who has 6 cars.
Wait, why is it got to be Steve?
Because Steve just makes sense to me. Too many years working with him, folks. So, and a thing they normally like to do is put a great initial price on the search sites and on their own website, telling you, oh, we're going to sell this car for $14,000, where everybody else has it listed for $16,000, $17,000. And what they're not telling you is they have a tendency of having a lot of hidden fees and unneeded costs. And you won't see all dealerships charging the same cost structure. So we picked the dealership we want to go to. You obviously don't want to divulge every piece of information you have. There's no reason until you have a price knocked down on the car, credit score or financing, down money, payment goals. Initially, we don't need to discuss a trade. Also, again, as Steve kind of said, never tell them you need a car right now, that it's broken down out front, that you towed it in. That's just, again, you've lost your leverage then. And the reason we tell you not to discuss a lot of these things is they're trying to take your focus off the bottom line, which makes it a little easier for them to make profit, which is their job.
So if I may interject, Pete, so what you're telling the people in the webinar here is that if the dealership the salesperson can get you excited about the car that you're looking at, it's less likely you're going to save money.
It's hard to focus when emotions are in play.
Absolutely. And that's, in the picking of the dealership, Pete mentioned already, the used car lot opposed to others. I always recommend people going to a dealership opposed to a used car lot. And this is why. When cars get traded in, the dealership goes through those trade-in cars, and for their used car lot, they're going to pick the cars that they like. They're going to pick the cars that are in good mechanical shape, that have good value to them, and that are marketable. The rest of those cars go to auction. Doesn't mean auction's a bad thing, but it does mean that it's a car that's less desirable. So now it winds up on this little used car lot of what I refer to as Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. And these guys are going to put duct tape and bubble gum to hold these things together, hit it with a can of spray paint, and tell you it's the best car that's ever been on their lot. If the big dealership doesn't want this car, there's a real good chance you don't want this car. So you probably should stay away from those used car lots. There are some good cars on those lots, but if you're not mechanically inclined enough to crawl underneath the car, look underneath the seats, look underneath the hood, look inside the trunk and down the sides of the car to find those imperfections, you're not going to know the difference. And you may put yourself in harm's way, finding out 6 months later that the car is in really poor shape and giving you a lot of difficulty.
Which we've actually seen in our time in the industry.
More times than I want to count, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it does give everyone a bad reputation when it happens.
Absolutely. It makes the industry look terrible.
So now that we've picking a car because everything says this is the right vehicle for us, get in the car, make sure it actually is. Do you fit comfortably? Is it actually accomplishing?
Does it smell?
Does it smell weird? And we'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. But just give it the actual sniff test that you kind of use Steve's point. Make sure it is what you expect out of that car, especially pre-owned. You definitely have to do a little more due diligence. Also, we're going to want to drive that car. Now, currently, it's not as easy as it normally would be, but there are some things we want you to take a look at before you agree to purchasing a vehicle, even if the price is right. When you start the car up initially, does it make a weird noise from the engine or any of the other components? And you also, with that being said, want to minimize the distractions. If the kids are in the back seat making a lot of noise, you can't hear what you need to hear. So ask everyone to be quiet when possible. Don't let the salesman talk over all this either. They're trained to try to hide imperfections, as I did many a times. You also want to check all the features in the car. Does the navigation screen work properly? Does the sunroof work properly? And anything else that's of importance to you, the power seat, obviously. And you're going to want to drive the car very similarly to how and where you normally drive. If you're on the highway a lot, you obviously want to use the car on the highway. Also, take advantage of any rough road spots you can find. Don't hit a crater. Obviously don't hit any side barriers, but take advantage of rumble strips. See if the suspension's tight. It's going to make noise if there's a problem most times. Okay? Obviously, brake hard as well. You want to know under a safe circumstance if the brake's going to do what you expect of them. Also, doing all this, especially if you're changing from dramatic types of vehicles, a Honda Civic is not going to drive the same way a Jeep Wrangler does or a pickup truck. So make sure you're comfortable with what we're discussing. Also, while you're driving, and don't let it be on or down the whole time, use your radio, use the windows. Make sure you're not getting that bass effect if it's a big problem for you, as it is for me. Also, when you're back in a parking lot, cycle through the transmission. Make sure reverse doesn't make a strange noise when you go to it. The drive doesn't make any noises, or going into neutral. Also, if it's four-wheel drive, make sure you put it through four-wheel drive. And back to a point Steve made, even though you may not be an expert at it, look at the car once you're done. Look down the body lines. Take a look at the tires. And just because tires pass inspection does not mean they're good tires. So be diligent on that part. Look in the trunk and where the spare tire would be in older cars. The spot's still normally there. There may not be a tire there. That's a very common spot for rust, water, residual water, and mold to build up because it's not something they necessarily clean. Make sure you look under the hood and along the seams, the door jambs, bare metal components. You want to see if there's rust there. You want to see if there's heavy oxidization. Also look under the car. I know no one wants to get their jeans dirty or their hands dirty, but it could be very important. If the owner, before you scrape the bottom a lot, you could have major repairs coming your way. And also look in the wheel wells with the tire cut hard both directions. Do you have anything to interject?
Yeah, there's demo driving a car. There's an endless list of things that you should be looking for. Pete mentioned looking down the side of the car. What he's talking about there is you stand at the front or rear bumper and look down the side of the car, even with the side, and you're looking for a perfect mirror effect from the area around you. If you don't see a perfect mirror effect of the area around you, that means there's an imperfection in the body, a dent, poor body work, shabby paint job, things of that nature. So you want to take a close look at that. The other big thing that I always look for is the space in the seams between trunk and fenders, hood and fenders, doors and fenders, to see that the space is even from one end of the gap to the other end of the gap. What this will tell me is whether or not the car has been taken apart and put back together after an accident. Now, just because you've got Carfax and so forth doesn't mean the car wasn't repaired. Okay, and this is where I tell people, picking a car, I stay away from cars that were previous rentals. Previous rentals are not, if they'd been in an accident, the rental company will do their own body work and not report to Carfax. People believe that the Carfax is the gospel truth, and it's only as good as the information provided. So be careful with that. But yeah, look closely at this. Now, okay, when picking a car, Pete, would you agree that we should also be trying out other cars for those that are looking at new, especially if I'm looking at a Honda CR-V, I should also be looking at a Toyota RAV4, so forth and so on, and maybe a Kia or a Hyundai Santa Fe or something like that, and get myself. Even if I'm not interested in those cars, you really should probably drive them and take a closer look, just to give yourself some confidence in the decision you're making and the direction you might be going as to one model or the other. Okay.
Would you rather regret spending a little extra time now, or regret what's sitting in your driveway?
Right.
To Steve's point.
Yep, absolutely.
And you also don't be scared to touch the car. You'll find a lot of imperfections with the vehicle by running your hands along seams. A lot's given away with bad paint that way. And Lisa, I believe we have a question?
Yes, we do. Our first question is it true that it is good to look for cars at a month's end or before New Year models come out?
You want to start, Steve?
Sure, I'll take this question. It is actually beneficial when you're looking at new cars mostly. It has some effect with used, but on new cars, month end is a very good time to go to buy a car, not shop, but to buy a car. The managers and the dealerships are incentivized on a monthly basis. They are also incentivized. The dealership is incentivized on a quarterly basis from the manufacturers. So there's a lot of money at stake if they don't meet their numbers with the manufacturer. So they're going to be much more aggressive, and sometimes have even done deals at a loss to gain the monies that the manufacturer may be offering them on that quarterly basis. Obviously, the best time, well, maybe not obviously, but the best time is the last quarter, the last month, the last week of the year. Not everybody wants to wait until the week before Christmas and New Year's to go shopping, but dealerships, if they're on the fence as to whether or not they're making their numbers, they will be very aggressive.
Well, with that being said, though, Steve, model end year is bigger. If you're talking new,
it can be.
That, and it's good if they're close to their number, and that's where I would argue this.
And it also depends on how many cars they have in stock.
Touche. But you're not, if you're looking for something special like that limited edition Volvo XC90, for example, and they have one coming in and that's all they have allotted, you may not get a good deal ever.
No, supply demand it plays a strong part.
That's a big part of it.
In the pricing cars, no doubt.
And Lisa, do you have another question?
Yes, we do. What about COVID? Is that is that as a time as model end year? So the guest is saying right now is this a good time to buy a car, or is it as good as?
Can I start this one? It really depends on how comfortable you are with what you're looking at, I would say. And obviously this is a little bit of a.
Pete, if I may, why don't you split it between new and used? Answer the question twice.
So I think it even breaks down a little bit more primitively than that, but.
Our guest is saying new.
Okay, you're looking new specifically. If you know exactly what you want, you're already through the research process, great time to buy, okay? Because there's a lot of dealerships actually doing home deliveries and doing return policy. So it can be great if you know you want, just for example, a Ford F-150, and you know the color, you know this, you know that, great, go buy. Because you may never actually have to go to the dealership. They'll bring you the paperwork. If you go, hey, I'm between a Ford F-150 and a Silverado and a Ram, I'm a little apprehensive to tell people to go do that right now, because you cannot just walk onto a dealership property and drive 6, 7, 8 cars, because they're sanitizing everything before you touch it, and a lot of them are allowing one person on the property at a time. So they may not have the time allotment to allow you to do your research.
I'm being told by some dealers that I've talked to, and I've talked to quite a few, that they're not doing demo drives at all until you've reached a price agreement and are there to actually purchase the car. They'll obviously let you drive it before you do the final signing, but That's it.
Yeah,
So
you're
they're very limited as to what they can expose themselves to.
yeah. So
That's understandable right now.
yeah, to your point, again, if you're not 100% sure, I would probably delay.
For those that are looking to get something used, would you say it's a good time or a bad time?
Again, how confident are you in what you want? That's really what a lot comes down to.
Good. Okay.
All right, we do have another question. What do you think about purchasing a car from Carvana as a first-time buyer?
Do you want to start, or do you want me to go with that?
I'll take a run at this. Carvana it's unique, but you have to look into the program that they offer. While the opportunity is there to sit on the couch and purchase a car, and that's all nice and convenient. The problem is when you go to return it, you have to take another car from them. So it's not like they're going to just refund your money and say, have a nice day. While they have you on the hook, so to say, they're going to reel you in. And if it's not with the first car they sent you, they'll send you another one. But you're once committed, you're committed. Pete, you have any more on that?
And I've also not been that impressed by the prices. Researching a lot of the cars, especially when we first started this program, I wanted to see if it made sense to, try to work with them. And their pricing point, and you're paying a premium for the convenience factor. If you're petrified of this, call us first. We'll help you. But I would also say I haven't been impressed by the price. With a rudimentary search on Car Gurus, let's say, you'll see where they kind of fall in with everything else in the industry right now.
Okay, great.
That's all of our questions for right now, but just a reminder, if you do have a question, click the questions tab on your dashboard, type in your question, hit send, and we'll communicate the question to Steve and Pete.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, getting the best price, negotiating tips. Negotiating is something that's very difficult for a lot of people. It's something that Pete and I have been doing for a long time. We're comfortable with it. It's almost like we're going in for the kill when we do this, regardless if we're selling or buying. So it's not too many people enjoy doing this. The most important thing that you can do as far as negotiating is be prepared. If you know the car you're looking at and you go to the dealership, have the information on what that car is being sold for. Not the MSRP on the car, but the actual selling price that people are buying the car for. You can do your research online. You can talk to us, and we can look into where the invoice numbers are and so forth. So you have a ground level of where you should get to, but do your research. Most importantly, to have that information with you and have some comparisons to say, well, if you people aren't going to work with me on the pricing here, then I have other options that I have to check out. Dealerships do not want you to leave the dealership. Now, this is assuming that we're back in some normalcy of going to the showroom. Today's times where we're buying online, it's still the same program, but you're going to do it a little slower fashion, as Pete mentioned earlier. But still bring your research findings to the table, and don't be afraid to ask for a deal. If you don't ask for it, I promise you the dealer is not going to offer it to you. Okay, don't allow when you're in there and you're working on the numbers. Don't allow the salesperson to take the focus off of the price of the car. When I sit down with a customer in a dealership and it's time for me to serve the numbers, I sit there and hold the paper away from you so you can't see it, and I talk to you about the car and about how you feel, how excited are you about the car. And I'll sit there and you'll see me talk to you and say, what did you think of the leather seats in that car? Were they not beautiful? Did you love the color of the car? how about the pickup of that car? Was the performance everything that you wanted it to be? And when I'm sitting there talking about all these highlights of the car you just drove and smiled ear to ear in, all of a sudden your head is going to do exactly what my head is doing, and you're going to start to bob up and down. And I'm going to now take the paper that I have and turn it to you and slide it across the table. And I'm going to ask you to focus on one section of that paper where it's going to tell us the different payments that are being offered for different terms and different amounts of money down. And I'm going to ask you, handing you the pen, to circle one and sign at the bottom. And you'd be amazed how many people will circle the payment that fits their budget best and sign at the bottom, unknowing that on the right side of that paper is the breakdown of the cost of the vehicle. The top right number is the cost of the car. Okay, from there, we add in warranties, we add in paint and fabric treatment, we add in other services, security etching, and then of course all your state fees, your sales tax and whatnot. And then the bottom number comes to the bottom, and then that transforms into a payment. But you're going to take a different approach. Okay, well, what I want you to do is when that paper comes across to you, I want you to take the gentleman's pen and I want you to put a big X across his payments, because you've already told him that you're a cash buyer. You're not worried about his financing. You're not worried about seeing what a payment might be. And then you're going to circle the top right number, which is the cost of the car. Let's use $25,000 for just a simple number. Okay, and then the number's $25,000. You're going to circle that number, and then you're going to cross it off. Above it, next to it, wherever you can fit it, you're going to write in the number below what your research has shown you. You're going to write in the number that you're willing to offer for the car. If you believe from your research that the car could be bought for $23,000, I want you to put 22. If you put 23, you're going to wind up in the end somewhere closer to 24. So by doing this, you're going to hold your ground with a number that is focused on just the cost of the car, not any other fluff. We don't want to take into consideration any other factors at all. Okay. And from there, the salesperson is going to go to the manager with your offer, and it'll seem like they're going to talk to Oz behind the curtain, and they're going to find out, whether or not they can get that number and how they're going to manipulate you into getting closer to their number. Okay, that's okay once, and to save time, the next time the salesperson comes back, he's going to come back with a ridiculous offer, nowhere near the offer that you wrote above the crossed off number. Okay, and what I want you to do from there is say, listen, to save your time and my time, ask your manager to do a TO, and we can bring this either to a deal or a close quickly. And the TO means takeover, a manager takeover. That's where somebody like myself as a sales manager, I would come out from behind the desk and I'd come over and sit down with you and really bring it to a deal. When you use that terminology of a TO, they're going to probably cringe quite a bit and squirm and say, "Oh, geez, how did they know what that means?" And that's okay. We want them to be the uncomfortable ones, not you. The manager's going to come over, and then the game begins. The manager is going to make an offer, okay? Or when they sit down, you can present your number. Either way, it doesn't matter. The first one to speak loses. It gets very awkward, it gets very uncomfortable. And I've sat there for more than 2 minutes silent with customers, waiting for them to respond as to whether or not they would accept my offer. If I spoke, I just gave away more money. Okay, so it's your job to say, at that point, when you've waited long enough, if they're not going to divulge a new number, say, I guess we're done here, and get up and get ready to leave. And that comes to my last bullet point here, where it mentions, don't be afraid to walk away. there's a lot of dealerships out there, and right now there's a lot of cars. Okay.
And do we have a question, Lisa?
We actually have a couple questions.
Okay.
The first one that came in was, what do you think of Enterprise or Hertz used cars?
I'll take that first.
Go ahead, Pete.
One of my jobs at our prior employer was actually helping with the intake of cars that came from Hertz, that came from Enterprise, more heavily Enterprise. You would not believe the way these cars look sometimes when they arrived, and it never showed up on a Carfax. So unless you're very confident in knowing what you're looking at, I highly advise away from rental car sales. Would you agree, Steve?
Absolutely. Like I mentioned before, they are not required to report anything to Carfax as far as what they have done as far as repairing that car while they've had it in service.
Because there's no insurance use.
I personally do not want a car that's had, who knows, maybe 100, 200 different people sitting in the seat. When I've rented cars, I never drove it with the care that I drive my own personal car. I hope that doesn't make me a bad person, but that's the truth.
That doesn't.
Other things make me a bad person. Thank you, Pete. All right.
All right, so our next question is, lease first purchase, what are the major considerations?
I'm sorry, say that again, Liz.
Lease first purchase, what are the major considerations?
Okay. Leasing can be a very good thing, and a lot of people can take advantage of the savings that leasing has to offer. However, you have to know the limitations and the parameters of that. With a leased car, you have to maintain that car to a certain condition, or upon return, you're going to be financially responsible for the worn out tires, the dents that are bigger than a half dollar, a quarter? Yeah, a 25-cent piece. So, you have to be very careful. One of the other things too is when you sign a lease, there's a mileage clause on that. And sometimes it's 10,000 miles, sometimes it's 12,000, and you can pick and choose when you set up the lease how many miles you figure you'll drive per year. And over the course of a 2-year lease, maybe it'll be 24,000, maybe it'll be 30,000, depending on your driving habits. If you exceed that, it can cost how much per mile, Pete?
Depending on the manufacturer, anywhere between 20 and 35 cents a mile.
I've heard 35 cents.
For a lot of luxury vehicles, it'll
Yeah.
be 35 cents.
So as much as 35 cents per mile, take the middle of the road at say 28 cents per mile. That's a lot of money if you went 5,000 miles over or 10,000 miles over. I don't even want to do that math. That's going to really come out of pocket a lot. The other thing to be concerned with is the final payment upon lease return, which is called what, Pete?
The waiver cost, or I forget the exact term, but it usually runs like $600 to $1,200.
But I've heard of them actually being less than that too. It's a final payment that's due at the termination of lease, and we just had somebody that coming out of the lease, and theirs was $300. So it depends on the setup of the lease. So at the same time, lease payments are lower normally, and you can save money with them. If you like to have a new car every couple of years, and you drive, you can predict the mileage you'll drive each year. You're consistent with it year after year after year. Then you may be a lease candidate, and I would recommend that you take advantage of that. Depending on the program that manufacturer is running on lease at that time.
Now, two things I always ask our members when this question comes up: how stable is your lifestyle? Have you been in your job for a long time? Are you of an age or a situation where things may change dramatically?
Right.
Kids, how far you drive to work. If your life's a little inconsistent, leasing may not make sense. Also, how often do you want to deal with a dealership, and how confident are you in the fact lease programs won't change? We're going through a cycle right now where lease payments are tending up a little bit. Do we have any other questions, Lisa?
Yes, we do have some more questions. So since we're on the leasing topic, is it better to buy your lease once your lease is up, or buy a new car?
I'll take this one. One thing I would say is, why would you pay for, at that point, a 9-10 year period on a car when you could have paid it off in 5, 6, 7? Take your lease payment add your end value on the vehicle or the buyout value, and do the math. How much have you spent on a car you could have bought in 6 years? I'd rather take the bigger payments up front, or just go buy a pre-owned car that has warranty on it. I don't like the idea of paying for a car for 10 years. It just doesn't make sense on a depreciating asset. Would you agree?
Sure. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
We do have some more questions in regards to your trade, which I know is next.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's talk about the trade.
Yeah, so bear with us on that point, and if you still have a question, please let us know. So finally, we're now on your trade, and if you did your research initially, this part's pretty straightforward because you have the numbers and you have real solid numbers from CarMax and We Buy Any Car to back up all that. So they're going to have to appraise your car. And again, we want to remind you, we do recommend having multiple appraisals done. We Buy Any Car, CarMax, for example. We know that's a little bit more difficult right now, but we would definitely tell you to do so. And finally, you can negotiate your trade. A lot of people don't believe or understand that, but the value that they tell you may not necessarily be what their appraiser told them to offer you for the car. So I always tell people, because they will ask you, what are you looking for your vehicle? Start a little high. Now, if you have a car that you've done your research and believes, let's say, worth $5,000, that doesn't mean ask for 20, because they may not even bother trying to negotiate because they think you're irrational in your number. If it's worth 5, asking for 8 up front isn't out of this world. Just try to keep it within scale, and there's no absolute number, but again, try to be realistic. You have any comments, Steve?
Yeah. Pete, when do you suggest that you mention that you have a trade? They're going to ask early in the process if you have a trade-in.
I would be a little haphazard. I'm not sure if I'm going to trade my car yet until we know if we're realistic on our numbers on what you're trying to sell me.
Say, I disagree with you there. There, I would tell them, no, there'll be no trade, because I don't want them holding any money back. When we talked to you before about the idea of negotiating the price of the vehicle, we want you focused on just the price of the vehicle. We don't want them to play a shell game with the value of your trade imposed. If you give them the slightest indication that you have a trade sitting out in their parking lot, then they're going to hold back on some of the discount they may give you on the car. As a sales manager, that's what I would do with you. My opinion is, no, there's no trade. No, there's no trade. And then after we've gotten to the number that we want to buy the car for, say, oh, by the way, I have a trade, and introduce the trade. At that point, again, the salesman will squirm. They won't like you very much at that moment, but Pete and I will really appreciate you doing that.
Yes.
We do have some questions. So one question is, can you trade in 2 cars if you're looking to purchase a new car?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've done 3 vehicles and a boat once when I was a sales manager.
Yes.
And Steve can tell you, we've had RVs. I mean, depending on the dealership, they'll take as much collateral as you have.
If it has a title, they'll take it as a trade. That's kind of the rule.
And some other questions we have are in regards to research. Where do you suggest people go to do the research for cars?
NADA.
NADA, if you're looking for values, NADA is the best, because that's what financial institutions are looking at, along with car dealerships. It's the actual value metric that Kelley Blue Book kind of portrays itself as. That is the insider numbers.
Okay, Kelley Blue Book is designed to be pleasing to the public.
Yeah.
And their numbers are not updated as frequent as NADA, nor are they as accurate. They fluff the number to appeal to the general public more than NADA is really a service to the car industry.
Now, also, I would say, if you're talking about reliability and the quality of a vehicle, Consumer Reports is always really good. I'm a big fan of Car and Driver. I read a lot of Motor Trend as well for my research work, because they do long-term testing as well. Yeah. I believe both Car and Driver and Motor Trend keep vehicles for a minimum of a year, and in that time, 2 years, some of them go, you'll see them put 40,000 miles on a car. So they'll know before you ever do about the quality and reliability of the vehicle over time.
Or if you have a car geek friend like Pete, you can call them.
And then you don't have to read as much.
One other question that we do have from a GSK employee, and GSK has a fleet pricing with Ford. However, this person is interested in a GMC. How does he or she know if they're getting the good price?
You call me. Or you call Steve is the best way and the most reliable way. There are resources out there like TrueCar, right? Am I thinking of the right one?
Sugar could be okay.
But they're not always 100% accurate, and they'll fluff their numbers a little bit, just like Kelley Blue Book will do sometimes. So you call them because they get a little something from starting the process. Even like the X plan that GSK has with Ford, and I've done quite a few of them. That's not always necessarily the best number. We've seen a little bit of move beyond that, or with Ford, with Chevy, it's called
Z plan?
No, that's Ford as well. That's Lincoln.
Oh yeah.
It's called Friends and Family.
Right.
I was actually a Chevy sales manager. Friends and Family is actually a great number. So depending on the brand, you have to do a little bit of research, but also give us a call, and we'll be happy to kind of guide you through this.
So what we do is we go in and we can have access to getting invoice numbers on new vehicles, and then from there we will call multiple dealerships and do a price comparison to what they have in stock and see who's going to get as close or below the actual invoice number from there. So that's how we roll it. Okay, you're almost done, but now comes the part where you're going to be sitting down, in the days of coronavirus, unfortunately not going to be sitting down. You'll probably be in the delivery bay with your car and the paperwork sprawled across the hood of the car where you're going to be signing. The business manager at some point in the process, most likely over the phone or internet, is going to push on you a lot of opportunities to buy warranties and other products, security etching. We have dealerships out there that are selling rain guard for the windshield, paint and fabric treatment. These things are extremely overinflated in pricing. A warranty, and that is not true, folks. It's oftentimes at least 100% markup, and sometimes further than that. The person that's putting these numbers in front of you is getting commission on each of these products. They are negotiable. Warranties are great for people that believe in them. Warranties can be a huge benefit unless you don't use it, and then you're going to feel like you wasted your money. But the good news is you must have bought a really good car. So, people ask me, well, should I get a warranty or not? That depends on how well you sleep at night. It's really a personal decision, and I would say the weaker the car, the more need for a warranty. When the paperwork is completed and you've signed everything, before you take the car, do a final inspection on it. There's often times that between it's been bumped, or somebody hit a pothole with the wheel and bent the rim. Take a close look at the car. Look it over. Once you leave, your leverage is minimal. Look at the windshield very close. Make sure there's not a chip in the glass. Make sure that that everything is the way it's supposed to be. Okay.
We do have a couple questions. So our first question is, where can you look to find the price on new cars?
There are a couple resources out there. I know Kelley talks about them, Kelley Blue Book,
right?
TrueCar, as we discussed. But again, give us a call as well. You're going to want to look at a few other things too. Check the consumer websites, and I know there are forums out there. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there's a lot of different resources to look it up, what the pricing structures look like. I use a lot of Google when I'm doing that, outside of actually looking up invoices and a few other things.
One other question is, do dealers make money on trade-ins?
We shouldn't laugh out loud about that, but only because that is such a huge moneymaker. It's called stealing a trade, and you know, if you allow a dealer to steal your trade, they will. That's why we talked about earlier, when they bring out the trade value after they've gone, they've appraised the car. Don't accept that first number. You've done your research. You've found out, you know, what your car is worth in a general sense. Now, keep in mind, when you know, you have to take consideration of the condition of your car. It may need tires. It may need paint work or whatever. Who knows?
Been in an accident.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, for that. But nonetheless, they're going to lowball you on that first offer, guaranteed. Okay, any dealer that's not lowballing it is probably looking for a new sales manager. Okay, that number's got to come out lower, and then they're going to, you know, they'll move on the number if you ask for it, or I should say, if you insist upon it.
When you insist upon it.
Yeah, you have to stand your ground here, and this is the second phase of negotiation. You've gone through the price of the car. You've got to go through it again with the value of your trade, or you're going to get financially hurt.
Now, the one caveat I would give you is there are retention programs out there that they entice you into buying a car. I ran one of these. I actually piloted one for years. They give you a value on the car up front. That doesn't mean I'm going to negotiate as hard on the car you're looking to purchase, though, because I gave you all the money on your trade. So, yeah, it absolutely can be a factor.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Any other questions?
No? Okay. Or, and you've kind of heard us say this throughout, or leave the process to us. We have been very successful in saving our members a fair amount of money over the years. And we have a link on our website under rates where you can get in contact with us directly. Just submit your question, and we'll be happy to reach out to you as soon as possible.
We do have a question.
Please.
So this member actually has worked with you in the past, Pete, and this member is asking, would she have to do all the negotiating and everything that was discussed, or would you basically give her a script that she could follow? How would the process work?
It depends on your comfort level, and I've recognized your name, so hi, how you been? It really depends. If you allow me to, I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you if you let me contact the dealership before you do. Sometimes if you contact them prior to me, it doesn't allow me to leverage. They're calling you directly and saying, hey, why is this guy Pete calling me? It's happened more than I want to admit. If you're comfortable with it and you prefer to do the negotiations, I'll happily help you through the process, tell you what to say, what not to say, how to start it. Again, it depends on what you want. We try to curtail this to every member specifically to make you happy.
One of the things Pete just mentioned, I have to drive this point home. If you're considering having us do some of the negotiating for you, let us go first, okay? If you open up the can of worms, it really ties our hands behind our back as to how much we can get discounted from the car. You can always come back after us and ask for more if you feel you know, we haven't gotten a big enough discount for you. But if you go in there and try to negotiate and then ask us to fix it, most likely we will fail. Okay, so please give us a shot if you want to use us. We designed this concierge service to be tailored to each individual. We'll help you as much or as little as you would like. Okay, so it's going to be different for each of you.
And we almost forgot to mention it is generally there's brokers out there that are a little different than us, but we are here as your advocate.
So we do have some more questions. Do you have any tips for a first-time buyer?
Walk in confidently. Confidence shows if you're going to a dealership, and do not be scared. Do not be scared to start the process before you actually arrive. It's a little easier to ask for help through the process if they're not staring at you.
So I'll elaborate a little further on that. Let's assume this first-time buyer is somebody who hasn't established all the credit that somebody older like myself has done, and you're going in looking for finance. Get with Arden. Get with our online loan application. Let's find out what your buying power is before you go in there, so you know what you're looking for within an approved budget. And you know, there's two factors that come into play for a first-time buyer. And on the credit side, you either have cash down to offset your lack of credit experience, or you have a co-buyer that's willing to sign along with you that has firm and good credit to support the approval. Okay, so keep that in mind. To Pete's point, though, information is king here. You need to go in with confidence. Confidence is built around the research and knowledge you have of the car intended. Okay.
And we have time for one last question. Do we need to take a loan to have you help us buy a car?
No, absolutely not.
Aren't we allowed to say yes?
We could try. I don't know if our
especially for Pete and I being in the auto lending side of things, we would love for you to use our loan. But I can promise you this: Pete and I have both sat with our members and advised them not to use Arden when it was financially making sense to go elsewhere. We are here as a free service. We are here as your credit union, and our job is to make sure your financial well-being is of the utmost importance. So. We would like to, but it's not mandatory.
Your best interests are always at heart, and that's why we try not to ever push anyone in any direction that's not best for them.
No, absolutely not. We will tell you the truth either way. Okay.
So thank you very much, guys.
All right.
That concludes our webinar for this evening. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend. I also want to thank Steve, Pete, Lisa, and the rest of our marketing team for hosting a really informative workshop. We will be emailing you a brief survey within the next 30 minutes, so keep an eye on your inbox. Any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Thanks again, and stay safe.